Welcome to the Power of Now What? Series 2, Still Now. In this series, I'd like to share the various spiritual practices and meditative principles that have helped me to recover from anxiety, depression, addiction, and obesity, and move into a life of inner peace, happiness, increased energy, joy, and health of body and mind. I'm going to explore how these profound, ancient teachings are actually more relevant now than ever. In the modern world, there is much psychological suffering, such as anxiety, depression, feelings of loneliness, isolation, issues with self-image, and struggles with identity. Many also find themselves lacking a sense of meaning or purpose. And without this inherent, integrated sense of meaning or purpose, life feels somewhat flat, dull, devoid of energy and direction. It's often said people just feel like life seems somewhat pointless. Like, what's the point of all this? What's the meaning of all this? It might come as a surprise that although we consider these to be modern problems, the reality is that these very problems have been going on since the dawn of humanity. And they are not caused by the modern world, but are inherent to the human condition. Many spiritual practices were developed as a remedy for such suffering, and this is why they remain relevant today. I have always found it so interesting when I read and research accounts and writings of ancient monks, spiritual teachers, gurus, sages, shamans, saints, priests and priestesses, when they speak on their experiences with mental health. They were not so different to us. They might use slightly different language. When they speak on anxiety, they might use the term fear. Or when they speak on depression, they might use the term melancholy. But they are speaking about the very same psychological suffering that we deal with today. And they too struggled with losing a sense of meaning or purpose at times, and wrestling with that sort of existential terror, these existential crises of just deeper searching. What is all this? Why are we here? What are we doing? And why do I suffer in the way that I suffer? Many spiritual practices and principles, entire traditions, entire religions have been developed in order to remedy this. And that's why I'd like to speak on this, but really how to apply it to the modern world with its modern challenges of the changing cultural landscape and the relentlessly accelerating technological advancements. And I just wanted to explain how I found that ancient practices, principles can be applied to our modern everyday life. Although we have these unique challenges in the modern world presented by this different technological and cultural landscape, it's clear that the human condition has not actually changed at all. We are not so different from each other or from the people in the past. The modern world didn't make us this way. We have always been this way. After all, there is no such thing as time, as we shall explore. And the past never went anywhere. It was now, then. And it is still now. It is my hope I can share a little of what I've learned over the years, and I shall endeavour to use practical examples from the modern world rather than getting bogged down in quotes, texts, scriptures, theories, and concepts. I choose instead to explain how we can find and then apply the essence, the juice, the heart of spiritual practice to our daily lives in order to truly improve our mental health and emotional well-being. We must come to an experienced understanding of this. I have seen many times that the truly transformative aspect, the key, the seed that needs to be planted in order for true transformation of one's life experience, it has to come through a direct, experienced understanding of certain principles. Once you have experienced even the slightest glimmer of true inner peace, that's enough. That's enough. That little spark. It's like a little seed that's just planted, and once it's there, it will just grow and grow. So as you listen to my words and this series of podcasts, I invite you not only to cognitively try to understand that which I'm pointing towards, but throughout the entirety of these podcasts, just continually return to a sense of being. Just the here and now, a sense of awareness of the present moment, consciousness of the presence of being. In this episode, this first one, we're going to begin where we will ultimately end. The present moment. Today, we are discussing the principle of presence. Have you ever noticed that it's only ever now? Just check this for yourself, right here, right now. If I were to formulate this as a question, is it now? In your current experience, is it the present moment now? The answer to that question will always be yes, regardless of when it is asked. I don't know you. I don't know your experiences. I don't know who you are receiving this. And yet there is something that I definitely do know. And that is, when you are listening to this, when you are listening to my words now, it will be the present moment. And although naturally the mind is going to want to say, but you recorded this in the past. I am listening to it now, but Corin, you recorded this in the past, did you not? Well, there may be some truth to that, but how amazing it is to realize that when you experience listening to these words, it will be the present moment. I am recording this in the present moment, and you will be receiving this in the present moment. There is no such thing as time. There is no such thing as time. This is the heart and the essence of presence. Simply a pure, clear recognition that it's only ever now. There are some very powerful pointings that I'm just going to run through. And we can do this now as a practical experience, not just a cognitive learning. So that means not just something we're going to understand on the level of the mind, but something that we are actually going to practice and experience for ourselves as a kind of meditative practice in itself, informal as it may be. And once there is a general grounding and understanding of this principle, we can then explore how presence, the beautifully simple and powerful practice of presence, can be a powerful remedy for anxiety and low mood. So firstly, just observing your experience of now. Whatever the present moment contains, just become very aware of it. Even if you are engaged in some busy activity. You may be driving, you may even be working or looking after children. Whatever it is that you're doing, just become aware of your experience. And if you were not to refer to any thoughts of the future, and you were not to refer to any thoughts of the past, just be in the now. Just this. And although the mind will continually go to thoughts of future, such as prediction, anxiety, worry, apprehension, and it may go to memories of the past, just recognize that all of this mind activity arises in the now. So, even when we're thinking about the future, it is happening now. Even when we are remembering the past, it is happening now. It's only ever now. And continually do this, just return to now, return to now, return to now. And there are various practices that we can utilize in order to continually bring our attention back to the now. One of the most powerful ones is simply to become aware of the breath. Just breathe. Allow the breath to rise and fall. Just be aware of the sensations of breathing. This brings us into the present because we cannot experience a future breath. We cannot experience a previous breath. Yes, we can imagine a future breath, and we can remember a previous breath. But we're not interested in the content of the mind. We're interested in experience. In your experience, the sensations of breathing only ever happen now. And just be aware of this. We are not analysing the breath. We are not interpreting or labelling the breath. We are not trying to decide whether this is good breath or bad breath. We're not even trying to deepen the breath. Just be aware of the sensations of breathing. As we do this, we might notice there is a shift in the energy of your being. As we bring attention into the present, we find we are less frantic. We find there is a sense of calmness and a sense of groundedness. And this is not to say that we have to snap into perfect inner peace immediately. It just doesn't really work like that. But what we might find is that we gradually begin to come to a more centered space, a more present place. Just a sense of calmness and peace begins to pervade. Now, becoming aware of the breath is a very powerful practice, and it's also very profound. One of the very interesting things I find about the breath is that it's both a conscious and an unconscious activity. It's one of those curious functions of the body that if we are not paying attention to it, it just kind of happens automatically in the background. But if we begin to pay attention to it, we can take conscious control of it, seemingly. And we can begin to change the way that we breathe. But how interesting it is that you must have been breathing all along. There's no way that you weren't breathing. I mean, if you weren't breathing and you're not breathing right now, then you've got bigger problems than I can help you with. Unfortunately, you need to escalate this to the relevant medical professional rapidly. But it's most likely, if you're listening to this podcast right now, that you are breathing currently, and you have been breathing all along. It's just fascinating, really. This tells us something about the nature of attention and conscious and unconscious activity. So becoming aware of the breath, it's not that you are beginning breathing. It's not that you're creating breathing. It's not even that you're maintaining breathing. What is actually happening is that you notice something that you previously were unaware of. Presence is exactly like this. Previously, you were unaware that it's only ever the present moment. Most likely, you were lost in a stream of thoughts that is dependent upon the belief in time. The belief that time is a real, solid, tangible thing. Most people tend to consider themselves to be an individual being moving along a timeline, moving out of a past and into a future. Perhaps many people have a kind of visualization in their head for how time kind of works, as though time is either behind us or left of us, and the future is in front of us or to the right of us, something along those lines. But hang on a minute, hang on. Have we checked the validity of this recently? Does time actually exist, or is it a product of the mind? Check in with your experience. Experience. Is there actually a future? Do you ever actually experience a future? And remember, we have thoughts of the future, we can imagine a future, we can predict the future. We can even predict the future with some degree of accuracy, in that when you drive to work, you can predict that you know what the road is going to look like, you know what work is going to be like generally. So there is some predictive power to our thoughts about the future. However, let's get serious now. Let's get real now. Let's experience this now. As you drive to work, it's still the present moment. And when you are at work, it is still the present moment. So in exactly the same way that we become aware of the breath, and you become aware of something that you previously were unaware of, become aware of the present moment. And you will become aware of something that you were previously unaware of. Presence. It's only ever now. if you sit with this for a while, if you do have the luxury of having 10, 20 minutes at some point in your days, it's worth sitting in that kind of meditative practice and principle. And if you've never done any meditation before, this is where I recommend people start. It's just simple presence. Presence is so simple and yet so powerful, perhaps the most powerful. If one sits immersed with attention and awareness entirely on the present moment, you will find everything that you need to know about finding inner peace just arises as a natural intuition. It just begins to make so much sense. It's only ever now. And the beauty of presence is that you can do it at any time. And it's not complicated. We don't have to go to some fancy breathing technique or some convoluted meditative or spiritual practice that is clothed in a lot of spiritual language or lots of theories and concepts that requires lots of reading and understanding. None of that is required for presence. All that you need for presence is consciousness, which you have, and presence, which you have. It's all that's required. Many people have a lifetime of spiritual meditative practice from presence alone. It's all that's required. Just upon learning this principle, you have a practice now, you have a technique now that when practiced regularly and with sincerity, with effort, attention, intention, you will find this has a radical, profound, transformative effect on your mental health. Let's return to presence. Just continue to breathe. Allow the breath to rise and fall. And if you open your awareness through the senses to everything that you can see, everything you can hear, touch, smell, taste, and even the bodily sensations, and just be aware. Awareness of your present experience. And notice that your attention tends to wander up into the mind, and thoughts of future and past. Well, this is just a habit. This is where we habitually place our attention. But if we retrain that habit and continually return attention to the breath, the presence of being in the here and now, we find that we regain our ability to stay centered, grounded, calmer, and at peace. Now, this very practice may feel like it is of more benefit and easier when you're in a very controlled environment. So when you're at home, in your bedroom or in lounge, or just somewhere where you feel you most likely won't be disturbed and there's fewer distractions. And this is a fantastic place to start with this principle. It just allows us to have that time and space to retrain that habit, to retrain that usual activity of constantly going up into the mind and getting caught on a train of thought. But the Power of Now What Series 2, Still Now, we're all about how to apply this to the busy modern world. We cannot be naive. We cannot be naive about this and just say that, oh great, now I've found presence, I'm never going to suffer from anxiety ever again. That would be a little too optimistic. We should remain optimistic because with practice, with energy and intention, that will happen. Presence does completely alleviate all psychological suffering. It really does. but to expect it to happen immediately might just be a little bit of an overreach. So let's explore some of the ways that we can apply presence to our daily lives, even when engaged in busy activity and activity that is very demanding of the mind, in order to alleviate and ultimately remove our tendency towards anxiety, stress, and low mood. As we're approaching the halfway mark here, just to do my cringy little plug. As we're approaching the halfway mark here, if you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. It really does help me and the channel out, so I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time to do that. If you are listening on Spotify, you might find my YouTube channel useful or of some benefit. I have lots of guided meditations on there, as well as talks on various topics in spirituality, as well as advice on overcoming addiction and improving your physical, mental, and emotional health and well-being. So if you are a Spotify listener, why not go check out my YouTube channel? And if you are a YouTube subscriber or member, why not go check me out on Spotify for more of these podcasts? So we've been looking at how presence, bringing our conscious awareness into the present, can provide us with a sense of inner peace and groundedness. But we might rightly ask the question, how can this help when we are engaged in busy daily life and daily activity? Which is a fair question. It's a question I certainly asked in the early days. After all, so if you don't know me and my background, I used to suffer with anxiety terribly, as well as depression. And I mean, it was so bad, I couldn't even make phone calls to pay an electric bill and pay a gas bill. There were times I couldn't sleep. There were times I couldn't even leave the house. That's how bad my anxiety was. It affected every area of my life, my professional life, my relationships, my physical health. Everything was affected by anxiety. And it was when I began meditation that things began to change for me. Not just meditation, I also engaged with physical exercise and talking therapies and seeing the doctor, everything like that as well. And I would advise, if you do suffer with anxiety, I'd advise you just engage with everything, go to see the doctors and do all the self-help stuff, all of that good stuff. Now, meditation was my entry point into finding this sense of inner peace, and it began this transformation. It began this journey for me. These days, I don't suffer with anxiety at all. I get a usual amount of worry, a normal and healthy amount of worry that anybody would have, really. But I don't suffer anymore, and that's the difference. I don't suffer. There can be the presence of worry, and paradoxically, this might not make much sense, but even when worry is present, I am at peace. And that might be hard to understand in the early days of your spiritual practice, but it will become more and more clear how that works in time. But early on in my meditation, I asked this exact same question. Well, I can sit here in meditation, I can be very present, I can bring my attention, my conscious awareness entirely into now, but how do I stay present even in busy daily life when I'm at work? Or what if I'm experiencing just an anxiety spike or a negative state of mind, or my emotional world is somehow disturbed, or there's some kind of crisis or emergency? Will presence help me to stay at peace even then? Yes, it does. It really does. And that's just what I'd like to discuss here, is how we can remain present. And, it's the common question, really, of what if the present moment sucks? What if there are elements of my experience that are very uncomfortable or perhaps even painful? How can presence provide peace even then? Well, if we were to take, for example, just a general day, when you wake up in the morning, especially if we're suffering from a period of stress and anxiety, you wake up and immediately there is a flood of thoughts and emotions about how the day is going to go. But if we're practicing presence, what if we could wake up and for that first 5 or 10 minutes of the day, you simply choose to remain fully in the here and now? After all of this anxiety and stress is a product of the mind. It's coming from the mind. But a very powerful question to constantly ask yourself is, what is the problem now, in this moment? If you weren't going to allow your attention to go to the mind, just allow yourself only what is happening now. What is the problem now? This is a remarkably powerful question to continually ask yourself when you are engaged in this practice, especially if you suffer with mental health issues. What is the actual problem now? You could even then develop that into the question, if the mind was not present, would I still be suffering in this moment? We find that so many problems are actually created by the mind. I mean, the mind is a problem solver, but the mind is so good at its job that it creates problems even if there aren't any problems there. It creates problems that it then wants to solve. Let's take an example right here about how anxiety is like an unwinnable game. Because when we are locked in this belief of a very real, tangible future, we find ourselves constantly trying to solve this infinite number of problems that could arise. So you wake up in the morning and you're thinking, what if I get an email today off that person I don't like dealing with at work? Or let's say you're a delivery driver. You might worry, what if my van breaks down? Now, we cannot deal with or fix problems that are imagined. You cannot fix a problem that you have imagined into existence. But if we're not aware of presence, if we haven't learned to stay present, then we actually suffer from these problems that we have imagined into existence. So in the morning you could wake up and sit there with your cup of coffee or tea, and you're locked in this imaginary battle in your mind, trying to deal with the problem of, what if my van breaks down? Or how am I going to word this email if I get a certain email? There's an almost infinite number of examples we can have of this. But do you see how the mind kind of sets up this stress and suffering? Nothing has actually happened. And again, we reaffirm to ourselves, what is the actual problem now? In that first 5-10 minutes of the day, what if you could just sit and be fully present? And whenever there are thoughts that come into the mind that start suggesting, yes, but what about this? What about the rest of the day? What if this happens? We simply chose not to engage with any of those thoughts. One of the most powerful visualizations, the metaphors or analogies that I found to be the most transformative, the most beneficial when I first got into meditation, was the image of the train of thought. Now, if you've suffered with anxiety and overthinking, you know what it feels like to be locked into a train of thought. hurtling along, racing along, very chaotic, very frantic. It's very difficult to get off of a train of thought once you are on it. Now, the best solution to this is to not get on that train of thought in the first place. You can get off of a train of thought once you are on it. It is possible, and something that we must learn to do if we suffer with anxiety and overthinking. But prevention is better than cure, right? So the best thing to do is to learn not how to get on board that train in the first place. And so this very powerful meditative practice I'd just like to share with you now is this visualization. If you visualize that you are stood on a train platform, and do this now, really vividly imagine that you are stood on a train platform. And a train pulls up to the platform and opens its doors. Your only task in this meditation is to not get on board. Simply remain on the platform. In time, that train closes its doors and sails off into the distance harmlessly. Now, what this represents is when we are present and you are the conscious awareness of being, a thought arrives in your conscious awareness in the same way that a train arrives at the platform. Do not get on board. Simply recognize and observe when the thought has arisen in the space of conscious awareness. Choose not to engage with it at all and allow it to close its doors and sail off harmlessly into the distance. This is how presence can be utilized first thing in the morning, even when faced with the prospect of a very busy day ahead. And this gives us a true sense of grounding, a very centered start to the day. It puts the control back in your hands, because you are not going to get lost in trying to deal with these infinitely changing, constantly shifting problems that your mind is imagining into existence. What is the problem now? So all of these thoughts that come into the mind, the worry about the day, the apprehension, the prediction of the infinite number of problems that could occur throughout the day, these are just thoughts arriving at the platform. And just for that first, however long you can do it in the morning, if you have longer than 10 minutes, by all means, do longer than 10 minutes. Just sit in presence, and that is like just being on the train platform. Just allow the thoughts to come into the field of awareness. Do not get on board and let them sail off. Now, at some point, we do have to engage with the activity of the day, whether that's professional work or looking after a family, or you're otherwise engaged for that day. There's just things that demand your attention, your thoughts, and your thinking. But what I would invite you to start doing is just being more and more present. Now, this can be challenging to begin with, but that's why it's a practice. This is a process. We are retraining the habit of a lifetime. And the crucial part of this habit is to understand that you choose where your attention goes. Habitually, our attention goes up into the mind, into thoughts of future and thoughts of past. But throughout the day, continually redirect attention to the present. Now, we can do that through reconnecting with the breath, and let's do this now. Just become aware of the sensations of breathing. Bring attention entirely into now, into the present, and just notice that it's still now. Everything I've just been describing and talking about has probably brought up lots of imagination and thoughts about your life and your life story and your activities and everything. So we may have become a little bit lost in a stream of thoughts at that time. But now, let's just return back to now. It's still now. It's still the present moment. We only ever experience now. And you can do this at any time. If you're driving to work, just become fully present of the activity of driving. Not predicting how work is going to be when you get there. Just become aware of the activity of driving, and you will have a much more peaceful commute to work. Or maybe you get the train or walk or bike, whatever it is. Just become consciously aware of the commute itself without trying to predict how the day is going to go. This has the added benefit of when you arrive at work, you will be so much more grounded and centered. And people love to be around grounded and centered people. Not only that, you will be able to bring the very best of your skills, knowledge, and experience to work because you are focused and attentive. You are focused on the work itself rather than being caught up in stressful narratives and streams of thought in the mind. We're not worried about the infinite number of problems that could happen. Instead, we're dealing with reality. So let's say worst case scenario, yes, you're a delivery driver and the van breaks down. That problem can be dealt with in the present. There is a solution to the problem. And if there's a solution to the problem, it's not really a problem at all. So anything that requires a solution in the present, whether we can fix the problem or we have to accept the problem or otherwise deal with the problem, if it's happening in the present, then it's happening in reality. It's not happening in imagination. So yes, we should be practical, pragmatic, and realistic. Just because we've become present doesn't mean that problems won't arise. They will. But when problems arise in the present, they have a response that will deal with, rectify, resolve the problem, whether we take practical steps to fix it or we have to practice some kind of acceptance in order to accept the problems that we can't fix. Therein lies the true power, the true peace of presence. Even if we're looking after children and they're being difficult. And again, let's be realistic. It's stressful. It's stressful when your child is behaving in a difficult way. Perhaps they're even being aggressive or obstinate or rude. Now, if we're not present and we're all caught up in our mind, then we might meet their difficult behavior with our own difficult behavior. But if we're incredibly consciously aware of being, you will be able to receive the true message that the child is trying to convey through their behavior. Your intuition will give you an insight into the inner emotional world of that child. And the behavior will no longer be stressful. You will simply be able to resonate with the child and intuit what that child needs, while accepting at the same time this can be quite demanding of you. Your energy will be demanding. It takes sincere, profound attention to truly look after a child. But if we bring our consciousness fully into the awareness of presence, then we find that we can do so in a much more centered and grounded way without our own stress affecting our ability to raise and look after children. This will lead to a much more conducive relationship to peace with that child. So presence here is about bringing our conscious awareness into the reality of the situation. We can constantly ask ourselves, what is the problem now? And if there is a problem arising in the now, we can either deal with it or we can accept it. All of that will arise within the present moment. We can apply this same conscious awareness to our inner world, and it's something that I recommend that you do. I recommend it for everyone, not just for people that are struggling and suffering with the mental or emotional well-being issues, but just at every moment, just being very attuned, very consciously aware of your inner world, your thoughts, your feelings, your bodily sensations. And this is an intuition. This will give you a clue into the precise nature of how you are that day, in that moment. And this will signal to yourself what you actually need. If you develop this inner ear, this conscious awareness of presence with everything that it includes, your entirety of experience within the present, this deep intuition to your current state will inform your decisions and behaviors. You will just begin to learn when you need to slow down. You will learn when you need to engage in different behaviors or different activities. You will know intuitively what the right behavior is that will be conducive to your mental health and well-being. It's only when we're caught up in the mind that we make mistakes. It's only when we're caught up in the mind that we find ourselves lost again on that train of thought. It's that train of thought when we're locked into it. People can spend whole days, whole weeks, months, even years locked on a train of thought. A stressful train of thought that is no good for body and brain. Cortisol, adrenaline, these are, to use the scientific term, catecholamines, which are stress hormones. When those are present in the system, it's a very poisonous, very toxic environment for the body and for the mind. And there is this horribly nasty feedback loop that happens. When the presence of these stress hormones are there in the blood, the mind picks up on them and assumes there must be a threat. And so the mind becomes filled with worried and anxious thoughts. And because we have those worried and anxious thoughts, the body releases more of these stress hormones into the bloodstream. And so this feedback loop just perpetuates and continues and continues. But if we can prevent that feedback loop from happening by not boarding the train of thought at all, instead just bringing conscious awareness to the reality of the present moment without getting locked into streams or trains of thought, we interrupt the feedback loop. We prevent the stress from building up in the bloodstream, and we lessen the stress of having anxious and worried thoughts. And so this feedback loop just slows down until body and mind finds serenity, tranquility, peace. We find that through practice, let's just again be realistic, pragmatic, and practical. You won't be a Zen master immediately on practicing presence. I wish it did work that way. It's most likely going to be a process. If we continually practice this habit of staying present, you will find that it becomes easier and easier. The more times you ignore that train pulling up to the platform, you will find it easier and easier to not be tempted to get on board, no matter how enticing that thought is, no matter how tempting that thought is, no matter how convincing that thought is. You know, the mind is tricky. The mind is a very, very tricky entity and will say, no, you must get on board this train of thought. This is a very important thought. You must devote time, energy, and attention to this thought I am presenting to you right now. If you do not pay attention to this thought, disaster will strike you. Disaster, catastrophe will befall you if you do not get on board this anxious train of thought. That is one of the most insidious thoughts that the mind comes up with. It is a liar. It's a liar. When we have anxiety, it's thought itself that's the problem, and we cannot solve the problem of thinking with more thinking. It's like throwing petrol onto a bonfire to try and put it out. You can't solve overthinking by more thinking. You can't solve anxiety with more anxiety. We have to cut power to these things. We cannot throw petrol onto the bonfire to put it out. It's only going to make things worse. And so more thinking is not what we need when the problem itself is thinking. When thoughts are the problem, we should not be trying to apply more thought in order to sort it out. Instead, cut power to thought. Remain on the platform, remain fully within presence. It may feel in the early days like it's impossible to practice presence when you are at work because of all the busyness and the demands on our attention, the demands of our thinking. But there just needs to be an element of faith and trust. After all, I mentioned towards the start, we are not creating presence. You're not even maintaining presence. You are just noticing that regardless of what the mind has to say about it, it's only ever the present moment anyway. It doesn't matter what the mind has to say about this. It's only ever now, regardless of what you think about it. There is no such thing as time. That is all that has to be recognized to find permanent, secure inner peace when it comes particularly to things like anxiety and low mood. Worry and rumination cannot exist once we recognize there is no future, there is no past. These things are a myth. There's no such thing. So really, to answer the question, how can I be at peace in the present if the present moment sucks? Well, if the present moment sucks, then the present moment sucks. That is what it is, I suppose. If there's a problem we can deal with, then we deal with it. If the problem can't be fixed, we must find some kind of acceptance with it. And then the curious paradox is that by remaining fully present, consciously aware of presence, we also notice that all things come and go. They are temporary. And problems, much like the thoughts that arrive within conscious awareness, can be dealt with or accepted, and soon those too depart. And if we remain present at all times, this stress and anxiety just doesn't really build up anymore. When we're fully present, we process the difficulty, we process negative thoughts and feelings, we process stress in the body at the time that it occurs. And if we process these things at the time that it occurs, it doesn't damage the body or the mind. It's just an appearance within the presence of conscious awareness, and that is all. We find that we don't ruminate on the day, we don't regret what happened during the day or feel guilt or shame about what happened during the day nearly as much, because anything that happened throughout the day was processed and you were consciously aware of it at the time it happened. Nothing got buried, nothing got avoided, nothing got put on the later base in order to deal with and process later. It was just accepted, worked through and dealt with at the time that it occurred. So when your day is over and you finished your day, and yes, maybe there was a lot of activity, maybe it was quite a stressful day, a frantic day. But if you remained present throughout the day, then when you're driving home from work and you get home, you're not so stressed, you're not so tense, you're not so agitated. And if you're not tense and stressed and agitated, you are far less likely to turn to those habitual coping mechanisms that are so often unhealthy. I mean, speaking as somebody who used to be an alcoholic, and I used to engage in a lot of binge eating and other very unhealthy activities, I know what it feels like to self-medicate psychological pain with substances and activities. And it only leads to more misery. It only leads to more suffering. But if we can find a way to be more accepting and allowing of even our negative emotional and psychological states, we no longer seek to soothe and self-medicate through these unhealthy activities. And there are many of them. People often go to the fridge or for food or booze, or they turn to Netflix and binge watch shows and things like that. Now, these activities, obviously, there's healthy ways to enjoy everything in life. It's just always worth checking in with yourself and making sure that you're not engaging in activities in an attempt to repress, or an attempt to avoid, or attempt to distract oneself from something that you're not comfortable or happy with in your internal world. So presence here is a very powerful way of improving your emotional, physical, and mental well-being, because you also become very conscious of your habits and which habits are kind of unhealthy, that aren't helping you, that aren't serving you. When you're very conscious and present, you might come home from work and just choose to sit again 5, 10, 20 minutes, just to allow the stress of the day to just subside, just resolve itself, just be processed within the present. You could call this meditation or reflection, whatever you want to call it. But because throughout the day you remained very present, you processed everything as it occurred, there won't be so much to reflect on, because you were conscious of it whilst it was occurring. But it can be useful to just sit in that contemplative, meditative way, just allow the stress of the day to subside. It's like if you were to imagine a pond with sediment at the bottom. Throughout the day we've been stomping through that pond and kicking up all of the dirt, making the water muddy. This is like our mind, our conscious awareness. Usually very clear and pure, but due to the activity of the day, a lot of sediment has been kicked up into the field of conscious awareness. When we come home after work, after that busyness, instead of turning to the fridge or the TV or the computer or whatever it is, or the phone, whatever it is, instead, just finding that conscious presence again, and you will allow all of that sediment to settle down until the water is once again clear. And once the water is then clear, we tend to find we engage with activities that are more enjoyable and healthy. Perhaps we'll choose to go get some exercise, perhaps we'll choose to read something that is very consciously engaging, that brings positivity and life to you. Perhaps you'll choose to engage with some of your good friends and socialize in that way. instead of turning to the more negative things. And there are many, many very negative, very distracting forms of entertainment, particularly in the modern world, right? That is definitely one area in which modern technology doesn't help us out, really. And something I would also, it might seem like a bit of a tangent, but just to be very consciously aware of is the type of media that you do consume when it comes to podcasts and YouTube and things like that. Because a lot of those forms of entertainment get your attention and retain your attention by being very negative. And they're designed to make you very angry, and they're designed to make you very dissatisfied. And there's just a lot of podcasts and videos that just do a lot of finger pointing and a lot of blaming and a lot of just very negative, very negative. You have to understand that these forms of entertainment are trying to gain and retain your attention, and one of the most powerful ways of doing that is to make you angry. And yeah, anyway, that's just one thing to be very consciously aware of. So I've covered a little bit there about the practical application of presence, and I guess sorry to start speaking a little bit more philosophically on this, but one of the most powerful things to recognize when we're becoming present, it's not that you're trying to kind of wedge yourself into like a split second of time. This is a common mistake in spiritual meditative practice. When people try to become present, it's like they're trying to freeze time, or trying to kind of force focus attention into a singular split second, an infinitesimally small sliver of time that is wedged between a vast future and a vast past. But that's not what we're doing here. Instead, we're recognizing there is no such thing as time. The mind has created time. The mind created time. It doesn't notice time. The mind doesn't perceive a real, tangible, solid thing called time. It actually invented it. It made it up as a way of categorizing its own experience. It's a measurement. Time is a measurement. But for some reason, we have forgotten that time is a measurement and is not the reality of life. For example, when you look at a tree, we can measure the height of the tree in meters. But the tree is not made out of meters. A tree is not constructed of meters. A tree is made out of tree. In exactly the same way, life is not made out of time, although we often believe that it is. We believe that our life is made out of years, but there are no years. That's a measurement. A measurement. Life is not made out of time. Life is made out of life. And your experience of life will always be this way. Only we have become so lost in our own system of measurement that we have forgotten the root and ground of being. We have forgotten the reality of the situation. There is no time. Time is a conceptual framework for measuring. We wouldn't say that a road is made out of miles. A road is made out of whatever a road is made out of. Miles is something that we kind of put on top of it. It's a measurement, and it's the same when it comes to time. If we are sincere about becoming present, we have to understand this. It's not that we're trying to create a new model of reality. We're not trying to create a new framework of understanding time. It doesn't work that way. Instead, it is the recognition that there is no time. It doesn't exist. It's a myth. Now, this measurement, this framework for understanding reality, it has some uses. It does have a practical application, as long as we don't forget. As long as we don't forget that it is just that. It's just a series of numbers. That's all time is. It is not reality. No wonder we suffer so much from anxiety. No wonder we suffer from our predictions about the future and our ruminations about the past. Because ultimately, we are suffering from an illusion. It can never be solved. It can never be rectified. The future contains an infinite number of horrors, an infinite number of terrifying events that could happen. And the past we continually return to, constantly analysing, ruminating, feeling regret, shame, guilt, rage, all of those things contained in the past. But these things, ultimately, we're engaging with them in the wrong way. And we engage with them in the wrong way due to the way that we are perceiving reality. We have come to confuse. We have confused ourselves by believing that the future and the past are real, solid, tangible things, and therefore require all of this mind activity to solve. But they are not. They are not real, tangible things. One analogy for this would be that when you read a menu, it would be a mistake to think that the menu is the meal. You read a menu and see that there's a delicious burger and chips that's advertised, and then you eat the menu, confusing it for the meal. You're not going to satisfy your appetite by eating the menu. The menu points towards something. The menu describes something. The menu explains something. But the menu is not the thing. That's crucial. Crucial. So time is a measurement. It explains or describes, but it is not the thing itself. That is the crucial understanding if one is to find peace in presence. I need to wrap this up for time purposes. Sorry, sometimes I crack myself up a little bit. It's a bad habit. I'm trying to stop doing it. But I just noticed the irony there of saying I need to wrap this up for time purposes. Bit of a paradox, but hey, there we are. However, I did just want to just explain one extra point, as I did just allude to this thing about the past and analysing the past and all of the guilt, regret and shame and everything of the past. We absolutely do need to become very conscious of how the past affects us in the present. This is something that we absolutely must do in order to improve our mental health and well-being. So we are taking a look at things like our childhood, how childhood experiences affect our mood, mental and emotional health in the present. This is absolutely legitimate and something that we should certainly do. This is another little clarification that is needed on presence. When we say there's no such thing as the past, we are not saying that the past didn't happen. It did happen. The past did happen. What we are trying to come to a deeper understanding of is that the past has been and gone. These events have already unfolded. We cannot go back to them. There is no going back to the past now. This does leave us with a little bit of a tricky nuance, because how can I heal from the past? if the past has been and gone? Doesn't that leave me kind of high and dry a little bit? Like, what am I supposed to do with these residues of the past? Well, the past is healed in the present also. The best way that I have come up to describe this, the best way that I can advise we approach this, is to see the past as something that is still happening, right? Still now. This is still happening, which can be terrifying, okay? It can be frightening, particularly if we've had difficult childhood experiences, traumatic experiences. I have, by the way. That's kind of what caused all of my problems to begin with. So I've needed to reconcile and work through and heal from the past. But the most powerful thing that I found to ensure that I am healthily processing all of this is to recognize that healing happens in the present. And we recognize that all of those events of the past, they live on in the body. But they are living on in the body now. And if we don't go up into our cognitive activity of memory and over-analysis and over-interpreting, what we can do is bring our conscious awareness to the present, and you can feel it in the body, the sensations in the body of the residues of all of these past experiences. You can feel the tension, the tightness. Eckhart Tolle called it the pain body. It's been called many different things. We could call it vasanas, samskaras. There's loads of different things that it's been described as. But once you become consciously aware of this deeply held, perhaps even repressed negative emotional charge that's being carried around in the body, we find that we can actually process it. We do it in the present. If we keep going up into the mind and into the memory, we run the risk of re-traumatizing ourselves. But if you go to how it's experienced, the residues of the past, how they are experienced in the body today, now, then we find a true resolution, a true reconciliation with a difficult, painful, perhaps even traumatic past. I'll go into that a little bit more detail in a later episode. Today was more about how presence can help us to find inner peace if we do suffer with anxiety and stress and we have busy daily activities and lives. I hope some of that was useful today. I don't really have a plan on what the next subject is going to be. Probably I'll speak on advaita in the next episode, but I tend to just go by what the energy of the day is. So today was presence. And it's good to be back, team. It's good to be back doing this podcast. In the first series, we looked more at post-awakening problems and how to navigate the world post-spiritual awakening. But I became aware that that's quite a niche, kind of a niche target audience. And I just want to share my experience, my knowledge, my learnings that have helped me for so much, because I know how many people are out there suffering, and it keeps me up at night. It keeps me up at night to know that people are suffering unnecessarily. So that's why in this series I wanted to focus on how these spiritual and meditative practices and principles can transform the way we live our lives. That health, mental and emotional and physical health, is possible. You can live a life free from suffering. You can. All of this psychological turmoil, you can be free of it. You can leave it behind. So that's why I wanted to focus this series 2, on that area, in this arena, in this space. Thank you so much for listening, team. I really mean it. I hope this finds you well today. Again, if you haven't whacked the old like and subscribe button yet, feel free to do so on the way out. Channel memberships are available on my YouTube channel if you want to support me and my work and allow me to produce more of these and produce more videos. And in the channel membership, you gain access to my exclusive guided meditations and talks, as well as access to my Discord server, in which you will find a community of like-minded individuals committed to this practice of finding true inner peace, spiritual awakening, health, and healing. I think that's everything to you. Until next time, you have been listening to The Power of Now What, Series 2, Still Now. I've been Corin Bryant. Thank you so much for listening. Have a blessed day. Take care, be well, and stay present.